More sweepingly, Trump and his FCC are using their powers to investigate, sue, and threaten news groups that dare to criticize the administration. Trump is suing CBS for $20 billion in damages because, check this out, he believes an interview with Kamala Harris produced too favorable an impression of her. So that means that I could sue Fox News because I think their interviews with Trump produce too favorable an impression of him. I mean, this is lunacy. And now, exploiting his asserted unitary executive powers, Trump is unleashing his sycophant FCC chairman Brendan Carr on every news group whose stories he doesn't approve of, actually threatening to pull the government broadcast licenses for ABC, CBS, NBC, PBS, and NPR. Nothing of a hostile nature, of course, has taken place against Fox News, which is now the de facto state-approved media, enjoys immunity from the repression visited on its liberal competitors. What is this, North Korea?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. I now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Garcia.
Well, thank you. Thank you to all of our witnesses for being here. And I want to just start off by making something clear. I think we're all here to fight against the lies, the corruptions, and the attacks on our social safety net. Now, we should in no way be cooperating with House Republicans who want to shut down the Department of Education and destroy Medicare and Medicaid. And we should not stand by as the richest man on the planet gives himself and his companies huge tax cuts while the American people get absolutely nothing. Now, I find it ironic, of course, that our chairwoman, Congresswoman Green, is in charge of running this committee. Now, in the last Congress, Chairwoman Green literally showed a dick pic in our oversight congressional hearing, so I thought I'd bring one as well. Now, this, of course, we know is President Elon Musk. He's also the world's richest man. He was the biggest political donor in the last election. He has billions of dollars in conflicts of interest, and we know that he is leading a power grab also abided by and encouraged by Donald Trump and, of course, the chairwoman, Congresswoman Green. But I also want to run through what DOJ actually is going to do. It's a demolition plan that's going to run through our government. DOJ is trying to abolish the Department of Education. That means opportunities denied to kids. It means you're ripping away opportunities for children with disabilities who are dependent on this money. You're also halting medical research, which is also critical, which we have to also stop. The idea that we're going to eliminate or destroy the Department of National Institutes of Health, NIH, is crazy. Let's talk about the Department of Labor. We're talking about protections for working people across this country, where people can actually complain about abuses their companies are making against them and their coworkers. Workers are now going to be in danger. And let's also talk about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, another huge issue for us. Think about the scammers and fraudsters that will be empowered across this country because Elon Musk wants, essentially, these companies have more power over consumers and over people across this country. Look at the Centers for Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. That is actually what's being discussed partly today. Healthcare, we're talking about being denied to millions of poor people, working class people across this country. And now, of course, they're on to their largest target, the U.S. Social Security Administration. We're talking about the destruction of the actual social safety net in this country. We know that 1 in 5 Americans collect Social Security, seniors, disabled people. This entire plan is about hurting the American social safety net and destroying our institutions. And it's important that we actually call out what is happening at this subcommittee. This is not about working with the richest man on the planet. This is actually about empowering. This committee wants to empower the richest person in the world to hurt people so they can take all of this money that they so-called want to save and then give it to themselves, their companies, and their billionaire friends. That is the attack that is happening in this committee and across this country, and it's important that we call it out. We also know, of course, that Elon Musk is sending his unqualified DOJ staff to carry out this agenda across all these agencies. And in some cases, actually teenage staffers. No accountability, no experience, and problematic records. They're trying to rob you, and they're probably a minor. Thank you, and I yield back.
I now recognize the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Crockett, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Talcove, I'm just going to go ahead and pick up where you left off really quickly. Just to be clear, the upgrades that you're talking about as it relates to our data processes, these aren't things that would be free, are they? They would cost some kind of money. Not looking for a number, but they will cost, correct?
Some are free and some would cost money.
Okay. All right. So I just want to leave it there because we've had a number of these hearings. So I do want to be clear, before the Trump administration came in, this committee did exist in the form of the Oversight Committee, and our task is to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. In that vein, we had a number of hearings, at least last term. I can't speak for any other term as I'm only in my sophomore term, and we dealt with improper payments. And interestingly enough, our chairwoman, who is so passionate about this today, she missed every single one of those improper payment hearings. But just to be clear, I was there, so I don't want anyone to believe that Democrats just come to work and don't plan to do work. In fact, I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is that the Republicans believe our job is, because right now they have relinquished their constitutional duties over to an unelected bureaucrat, someone who no one went out to vote for. And absolutely, he is occupying the Oval Office, as we saw yesterday. And that is a first for me, to see someone occupying the Oval Office who's never actually been elected to the Oval Office and actually answering more questions than the person that allegedly got elected. But for whatever reason, this is the first time we're having a DOJ subcommittee hearing, and that guy's not here. Instead, we have y'all. So I do want to thank you for coming. But I will say this. It's also interesting to me that in the first few days of DOJ existing, we know that they are trying to get rid of the Department of Education, USAID, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They're laying off FAA workers. They are going after the FDA, the CDC, the HHS, the FBI agents, and they're talking about getting rid of FEMA. And they brought y'all in. And I am going to say that I actually was shocked that there was only one person that seemed like he was an overt Trumper as you laid out your opening remarks, because I anticipated that at least one of y'all would say, yes, what Elon is doing is exactly what we would prescribe. But instead, I will applaud you because you actually were focused. You talked about what the American people are looking for us to do. We've actually consistently on this side of the aisle promoted this idea of making investments into technology so that we can do things such as, say, look at the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense that takes up approximately, 50% of our discretionary income, or our discretionary spending. Approximately 50% goes to Department of Defense. Department of Defense has not been able to pass an audit in the last 6 audits, and we're not talking about pennies. I understand that we want everything to be perfect, and if we could get all waste, fraud, and abuse out, that would be fantastic. But let me talk about the big numbers. The big numbers are on that side. When we look at, say, our entire workforce, our federal workforce, as we're trying to somehow fire all of them, they don't even make up a total of 5%. It's even less than that when we look at our budget. But let's talk about defense. That just happens to be the same side of the ledger that Mr. Musk gets the vast majority of his money from. In fact, at the same time that they were unlawfully, and we will stay in court, because on this side, we believe in law and order. We believe in, a number of us are actually lawyers, but nevertheless, we understand the Constitution. We believe in that as well. And so there's things such as, impoundment, right? Because as Mr. Whitson said, he said, we need to return the power of the purse to Congress. It never left. According to the Constitution, that's where it's at. Now, I know that people are confused right now because for whatever reason, we had a guy that went in, and you talk about people invading our data. Listen, people said that they were upset about TikTok, but I'm upset about the guy that runs Twitter, who for sure is doing nefarious things, because I don't understand if you were trying to conduct audits and figure out where the waste, fraud, and abuse is, I don't know why you would go to some tech guy. In fact, it was only techies that were sitting there at inauguration. We didn't have auditors. I would welcome auditors to come in and do forensic audits. In fact, he sat there in the Oval Office yesterday and he admitted that he was lying and he was using his propaganda machine to do it when he said that we sent millions of dollars to Gaza for condoms. That was a lie. So let me tell you something.
The
We were
gentlelady's
duly elected,
time has expired.
And it is time for
The
us
gentlelady's
to do our
time has
job
expired.
and rein in this rogue actor known
The gentlelady's
as
time.
Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia of California. He's a member of the new DOJ subcommittee in the House, which is set to actually hold its first hearing at the top of the hour. And so to that end, Congressman, I've got two questions for you. One that might seem a little procedural, but first, do you guys have, as Democrats in the minority on this committee, meaningful subpoena power here?
Well, look, we've tried. And I think that this committee and our larger oversight committee have even tried to get Elon Musk to come to testify. That's been blocked by the Republicans. Right. And so a lot of that's being negotiated still. But as of right now, we're prepared today to go in and ask and answer some really tough questions. We want to see Elon Musk, but we're also going to call out the corruption. We're going to call out the fact that we have essentially an unelected billionaire with almost as much power as the president of the United States. And I think we're going to bring the fire today. And so I think even though we don't have all the power that we would like, we're going to use every minute that we are given at this hearing to call out the corruption.
So, folks, what you saw there was Trump getting humiliated at the first congressional hearing, the first high-profile one of the year, and they just got roasted by the whole squad of Democrats. Not the squad, but a squad, I suppose, of top Democrats. Some of them young, up-and-comers, and some of them veteran stars like Jamie Raskin. And what they're all doing is really exposing Trump and Musk for their level of corruption, how they're abusing the First Amendment and how they're disregarding it, and how they're abusing the traditional powers of the White House. Remember, a lot of this is based on good faith. I've talked about this. A lot of the powers of the presidency, for better or worse, were crafted, hundreds of years ago by men long gone. And in some cases, they clearly laid out presidential powers, but in other cases, they sort of just vaguely put signposts around what the president can and can't do. And it was assumed that the president and the president's top advisors, like Elon, what have you, would act in good faith and wouldn't overstep their bounds. And we're seeing in real time what happens when you have a president that is not just doing something criminal, but that is actively proud of criminal activities. And what we do need to see is this, and it is triggering Republicans. They don't want to see this, and Trump doesn't want to be dragged in these congressional hearings.